Well, good afternoon, everyone. So I'm Jeff Brown, Dean of the Gies College of Business, and I really want to thank you all for joining us here today for the annual Cozad lecture on entrepreneurship. It's great to see so many people, especially all of our students who are here with us today. The V. Dale Cozad lecture on entrepreneurship has long been one of the signature events in the life of this college. This is an annual lecture series that was established by Peter Fox in 1997 as a way to honor his good friend Dale Cozad for his hard work, dedication, and his success as an entrepreneur. Dale was deeply involved in our community, was a steadfast supporter of the University of Illinois, including the Division of Intercollegiate Athletics, as well as the Gies College of Business. His lasting impact, I'm not the only one hearing that, am I? It's like I'm expecting a T-Rex to appear. I don't know what that is. Anyway, so Dale's lasting impact and his entrepreneurial prowess is what is today known as Cozad Asset Management. Founded in 1972, it's a registered investment advisory with more than $1.7 billion of assets under management. And I would actually like to start today by recognizing a few very special guests that we have with us, including Mimi Cozad-Negrin, who is Dale's wife, as well as Dale's son, Greg Cozad, and his wife, Christy. So thank you all for being here with us today. We also want to recognize several very good friends of the Cozads and of our college who are unable to be with us in person here today, but who've been instrumental in supporting this lecture series over the years. That includes Murray and Valerie Wise, Cindy Cozad Norris and John Norris, Peter and Kim Fox. So thanks to all of them for their continued support of Gies. So today's lecture is being hosted by our Origin Ventures Academy for Entrepreneurial Leadership, and I'd like to thank Robert Brunner and everybody on that entire team for everything that they do in the college, and thanks to all the Gies Business faculty, staff, students, alums, and friends from the community who are here with us today. So as many of you know, here at Gies, we empower our learners to transform their ideas into actions that have a positive impact on the world. And providing opportunities like today's event for our learners so that they can hear stories and insights and advice of entrepreneurs is an example of one of the many ways that we deliver and live out that promise. We take enormous pride here at Gies and at the university in what we call our entrepreneurial ecosystem. From day one, we encourage our learners to think creatively, to develop business solutions to help make the world a better place. Many of our faculty and alumni are themselves entrepreneurs, and they help to push students to discover their own paths to success. Well, today we are really delighted to have two Gies Business alumni, each of whom really represents and embodies the kind of entrepreneurial spirit that this lecture series was designed to celebrate, and which Gies is really designed to help embody and create. We have a little bit of a different format this year, so instead of a lecture, we're going to have one of our alums interview the other. In particular, Larry Gies is going to be interviewing Michael Krasny. Michael Krasny is a 1975 graduate of Gies with a degree in finance. He is the founder and the retired chairman and CEO of CDW. From its founding in 1984, CDW grew to be a Fortune 500 company and the nation's largest direct marketer of multi-brand computer products for business. Michael sold CDW in October of 2007 and is now fully retired from the company. And today he spends his time at Sawdust Investment Management Corporation, a private investment management firm, to focus on managing the investments of the single-family office, which in turn sustains the many philanthropic efforts of the Circle of Service Foundation, which is his family foundation that supports the needs of the community, and who I will add has been very generous to this college. The continuous increase in CDW sales and profit aren't, though, what makes Michael most proud. It's the fact that during his tenure with the company, CDW was named to Fortune magazine's list of the 100 best companies to work for in America every single year the application was submitted. That's a pretty phenomenal achievement if you stop and think about it. So he's going to be having a conversation this afternoon with our very own Larry Gies. Larry, as you know, is a 1998 graduate, or excuse me, 1988 graduate.
98's fine, Jeff.
Yeah,
98's
okay, we'll
fine.
go with 98. 2018 graduate of the College of Business with a degree in accountancy. Larry and his wife, Beth, have become such an incredibly important part of the culture and the life of this college, and of course, the identity of the Gies College of Business. And next month, just a few weeks from now, we're going to be celebrating the 5-year anniversary of their historic investment and naming of our college. And ever since that wonderful day, just under 5 years ago, our partnership with Larry and Beth has been truly phenomenal. It is incredibly rare and even more special that our college's namesake is someone who is so active and involved in everything that we have going on here. They saw the opportunity to help us, to help the faculty, staff, and the students to create life-changing access to business education, including through increased scholarships. He also knew that by being able to retain and attract the very best faculty in the world, we could elevate our level of excellence. And the gift has also unleashed a wave of innovation in this college that's really unlike anything we had ever seen before. So both Larry and Michael are really wonderful stories of success and champions of all the programs that we offer here at Gies. And like all of you, I'm really looking forward to hearing the insights that they have to offer. So Michael and Larry, welcome and thank you. Over to you.
Well, thank you, Dean Brown. Thank you to the Cozad family for putting this series on. This is wonderful. It's a wonderful way for the students to connect. And I can't tell you how excited I am to be able to interview Michael Krasny, who's a friend of mine, a mentor of mine, and just a terrific human being. So this is a real pleasure for me. And I think it was 20 years and 2 days ago when Michael was here and rocked the house at Gies Business with a lecture that he gave. And there's some folks in the audience who still have notes from that lecture and some fond memories. So let's start by giving a warm welcome to Michael Krasny with an ILL. You guys can do better than that. ILL. Awesome. So Michael, thank you.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm very honored to be here 48 years after graduating from here and to do a repeat of the lectures. Thank you very much for putting these on. Public speaking is not something that I particularly enjoy doing, and when I was asked to do it, I said, no, thank you. And when Dean Brown continues to ask repetitiously, I agreed I would do it if we could do it in an interview style. Unbeknownst to me, Larry stepped up and said, we will have a discussion together. So I'm honored to be here with Larry today. I'm honored to be here, and thank you very much for having me.
So let's take it from there. It's 1975. You were a student graduating from the University of Illinois. What were you thinking back then? What was your goals and your vision for your life back in 1975?
So before doing that, can I back up a little bit before 1975, how I got here? Because I did not come here out of high school. I was not a particularly good student in high school, could not get in here. Quite frankly, I didn't even want to go to college. And my parents said, yes, you will go to college. And we had a little discussion, and I ended up going to a junior college my first 2 years. And then I had a bunch of friends that were coming to school here, and they said, why don't you come here? Well, I came not for the academics, I came here for my friends, and I applied, and I didn't get in. I was turned down. So I said, well, I'll go see my friends, I'll make a stop at the admissions office and ask them, why were you turned down? And I came here and I met with some young lady at the time, and I'm not young anymore, so she would be older than me today, in her 70s. And somehow or another, I talked my way in.
Is that right?
Yes, some way. And I've asked, and I think, Dean Brown, I think you've tried to do the research to figure out who that person was. We've never been able to figure out who it is. But whoever it is, I thank them for getting me here. And it has really changed my life from being here. Not only from the education, but also from the network of people that I've met here, which still is my network of friends today, in which I consider them as important as the education itself that I received here. I actually consider myself to be one of the least successful of my group of friends. There's attorneys, there's doctors, there's MBAs and all that stuff. I was just a plain old computer salesman. But when I graduated, Larry, it's a long way to get to your answer.
No, I'm really glad you did that. And I'm thankful that she allowed you in, too. I just want to know what you said.
I'd like to know, too, what I said. I don't remember. From the time that I was a little boy, I anticipated going to work with my father. My father was an automobile dealer, and he was a Toyota dealer, became a Toyota dealer during a period of time when nobody knew what a Toyota was. During a period of time that the cars weren't a very good car, but he was an early Toyota dealer. And when I graduated in 1975 on a Sunday, on Monday, my father said, come to work. So I graduated going there into the automobile business and had an anticipation that for the next 50 years, I would be an automobile dealer. Throughout the process, I left once, I left the second time finally, but I'd like to tell a little story if I may. I was a salesman, and there was a sales manager, and one night the sales manager took me out to dinner, and he told me, you're a screw-up. He says, you're not doing very well. I said, what do you mean? Everybody likes me here. He says, not really, and he wasn't, his words were a little bit tougher than this. Not really, but they have to be nice to you. You're Max's kid. He says, you have to earn the respect. You can't demand the respect. And I walked out of there with the greatest lesson of my life, and it really was a change for me. And fortunately, 10 or 15 years ago, I had a chance to see him, to thank him, because those words that night when we sat down really helped me down the road of understanding that some humility was necessary in life. So I thank him.
And so what was the day or the moment or the process you went through when you realized you were going to be an automotive dealer?
I started playing with computers, as you and I were talking, in the late 60s. A computer, to me, is a logical device. I am very handy with my hands, with screwdrivers, with hammers, with pliers, anything mechanical. I'm a wannabe engineer. I actually, when I was here, I thought about transferring to the business school, to the computer science school, but because it would have been another 2 or 3 years, I wasn't go through that process of doing it. So in the automobile business, I was starting to do a few things to automate the agency. My father didn't understand what computers were, and my father and I had a love-hate relationship, and eventually I left there just because the two of us were not getting along, unknown what I was going to do. Some people said to me, are you going to do things with computers? I said, no, that's a hobby. I can't make a profession out of it. So I'm not sure that I got into computers. It was never planned to do what I did. It just sort of evolved. I'm currently reading a book right now by the name of One Giant Step. And it's the story, and I think I mentioned this here on the way down, it's the story of how John F. Kennedy said we're going to put a man on the moon, and how 10 years later, how we put a man on the moon. They didn't have a plan to get there. It was a whole bunch of audibles being called over a 10-year period of time. You make a little process, you change, and going along the way. And that's sort of what my process was about. It was, never had a plan to get into computers. I just kept on seeing opportunities, and I would adjust and call audibles in order to be able to get there.
What audibles were you calling? You leave the dealership. I'm sure your mom and dad knew you'd be immensely successful. And what was the audible you called, and what was kind of that process that got you into taking your passion as a full-time job?
So when I left the automobile dealership, for about 18 months I didn't work. I was trying to figure out what to do. I looked at buying my own automobile dealership. I looked at buying an Ace hardware store, opening up a computer store, and none of them ever seemed to work. And then one day I saw an advertisement to take a D-based programming class. This was in 1983, to take a D-based programming class, and that was a 3-day class for like $19.95. And I went to sign up for the class. They said, do you want to buy the book? It's an extra $8. And I said, sure, I'll buy the book. And as I said, I wasn't a great student, and I don't read a lot, but I went home and I read the book from cover to cover and absolutely fell in love with it. I mean, it was like reading a bestseller. It was great. And it was, when I was here, I thank the dean for not talking about my academic record here, because if you've ever looked at it, but it wasn't outstanding, although I did get an A in computer science, and that I was proud of. I took this class, and I learned D-based programming, and then I was reading the Chicago Tribune again, and I saw an ad for a D-based programmer wanted. So I took the class, so I figured I'll apply for the job. So I applied for the job in 1982 or 3, and it was a former doctor who had this vision of creating a scheduling program for hospitals, and he wanted to program it in D-base. So he hired me to write the program. I used to stay up till 6 o'clock in the morning programming. I would go to McDonald's, I get a Big Mac for breakfast, I go home and get a few hours of sleep, and then he was taking me with him on sales calls to be able to try to sell the computer programming that we were trying to write. At one point, he offered me a partnership in the company, and he said, you can buy 30% for $20,000. I had a few dollars, and I said, yeah, I like this. I think it's a good idea. So I agreed to buy 30% of the company for $20,000. And 4 or 5 weeks later, he hadn't progressed with the paperwork, and I asked him, well, where are we in this process? He says, well, it's going better than I expected. I can only give you 20%, and I have to increase the price to $30,000. I said, no, thank you. You know, my dad taught me, your handshake is your bond. When you say you're going to do something, I expect people to do it, and I left. I might mention he never sold to one hospital, never signed up on his program. But now I had a used computer at home that I didn't know what to do with. So I put an ad in the paper for 3 days, 3 lines, $3 in the Chicago Tribune to sell the computer. And somebody came to my house, bought it, and I made a couple $100 because remember I was a car salesman, so I sort of knew how to buy right and sell right. And somebody else came to the door and said, I'd like to buy the computer. I said, I'm sorry, it's sold, it's gone. He says, well, I really wanted it, I'm so sorry. I said, well, if you want, I can get you another one. I was a computer programmer, and I have access, I'll get you another computer. So he says, would you really do that? I said, sure. So I went and bought another computer. And what I would do is I would buy them stripped down, because when you bought a disk drive from IBM, they were $500. But if you bought a non-logo IBM disk drive, it was only $100. So I was able to configure them for less than IBM was selling them for. And I delivered it to him, sold it, made another couple $100. And then the first guy called me back and said, by any chance, can you get me another computer? I said, sure. So now I sold 3 computers. So then I said, hey, this is pretty good. I made more money selling these computers in 3 days than I made working for him in 3 months or whatever it might have been. So I took out another ad in the newspaper. And again, I sold some more stuff, and now some repeat business came. And that's how the whole thing began. Those were some of the audibles along the way of just recognizing opportunities. So then, as I was networking within the industry, I learned who some of these distributors were to buy products from, because I was buying them from retail stores, and I learned about the distributors, so I started to buy from distributors. So I started buying wholesale, where before I was buying at retail. And I learned that there was this company in Chicago by the name of PC Network. They were the first direct marketer or mail order of computer products back in 1982 or 3, and their business was on fire. And back in those days, IBM would not approve everybody to be an authorized IBM dealer, so a gray market was established. And virtually every industry, I'm sure some of the industries you're involved in, there's gray markets in them. And it's not illegal, but what it is where products take a different path of distribution than the manufacturer's intended path for those products to be in. And this company, PC Network, had a need for more PCs. So I was able to supply them the PCs through the network that I had created. And I was selling them to them making $20 a computer, and they were selling them making me $300 or $400 per computer. And I said to myself, what's wrong with this program? I'm only making 20, they're making 200 or 300. I can do the same thing. So Thanksgiving, so it's coming up of 1985. So it's coming up on, what is that, 37 years? It's coming up in 37 years. I placed an ad in PC World magazine of Computer Discount Warehouse. The original name of the company was MPK Computing, my initials, but I didn't think the name MPK would have much appeal in an advertisement. So I came up with this name, Computer Discount Warehouse. And I placed an ad in the December 1985 PC World magazine. And the day after Thanksgiving, the phone started ringing off the hook. I mean, it may have rang 10 times a day prior to that. And this day it probably was ringing 10 times an hour at this day.
And you're the only employee at this point?
No, I had at this point a administrator and 2 salesmen.
Okay.
One salesman had worked there for 4 days, and the other one for 2 or 3 months. And we started at that point. Phone starts to ring, and on Monday morning, FedEx shows up at our door, and they have an envelope and said, is there somebody here by the name of Computer Discount Warehouse? And he has an envelope. We open up the envelope, and in it there was a certified or cashier's check. I don't remember the dollar amount, but for $3,000 or $4,000 that somebody had prepaid us to get a product shipped out to them. And at that moment, I made a decision, and what do I do? And that is that, do I think long-term or do I think short-term? Meaning, let's see if we can sell a few computers, make some quick bucks, or do we think more in a long-term manner? And I made a decision that morning, the Monday after Thanksgiving in 1985, that we're going to try to do this gig for a long-term period of time. And as a result of that, to service our customers with the ultimate best service that we possibly can, which, by the way, always wasn't so great. Because as we were growing, and it was growing at a speed beyond it was out of control, quite frankly, that we weren't always satisfying every customer as we did later in our life expectancy. A couple years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, we have an investment in a private company, and at a board meeting, and they were growing very rapidly. I said to the fellow that runs it, I said, don't worry if you get a couple customers upset. In the early days, we did not necessarily satisfy every customer, but we worked our way through the problem. And he rightfully said to me, he says, today is different than then. There's this thing called the internet. And when you don't service people properly today, everybody knows about it. Back then, when you didn't service people properly, nobody knew about it. So, timing was very good for us.
Was there a point that you thought, all right, I'm onto something here? Like, I've got something here, there's definitely a demand, and I'm going to build a business out of it? Or was it truly just day by day?
I don't think it's till the day that I sold it that I actually felt comfortable. Even when we were at, we reached the Fortune 500, we were at 8,000 people. We were Fortune best company to work for. Every metrics that you could think that was good metrics. I still walk to work every day paranoid a failure. I don't know if they're up here or if they're going to be here, but at some point you're going to see our philosophy. Hopefully we'll see our philosophies of success on the screen, because even today, oh, here we go. And actually, could you go to, there's one here, it says, paranoid to survive, I think, or success means never being satisfied. I think it was, there's a number 4 on there? But your question was, every day I was always afraid of failure.
How did you deal with that? Like that's got to be.
I sold the company. It got to me eventually. No, it was like a 20-year plus stressful existence.
And I assume it got worse over time. Like it was exciting. That stress was probably exciting at the beginning, and then started to just grate on you at some point.
Yes.
And did that permeate throughout the organization? Was there this uncomfort? I mean, you know, you built a $30 billion market cap company with 15,000 employees, one of the largest companies in the United States of America. A lot of people would say that was success.
It was success, but when you had expectation of people, expectation of analysts, you had to continuously reinvent yourself. Of somebody who, quite frankly, struggled to get through school, you know, there's the Peter principle. And I was very satisfied. You know, one of these says success means never being satisfied. Quite frankly, I was satisfied, and as soon as I was satisfied, I knew it was time.
Interesting.
To get out.
You mentioned it earlier, and this is truly an unbelievable achievement. Every single year you applied, you were on the Fortune 100 best companies to work for. And what's really fascinating, and I looked this up yesterday, even in 2022, CDW is ranked as one of the best places to work. Why did you create that culture? How did you create it, and how did it outlast you?
Because I realized that our most important asset was our coworkers. You know, our inventory, our customers. I cared more about my coworkers than I did about my customers. And I cared more about my coworkers than I cared about our profitability. Profitability is only a byproduct of executing a business on all cylinders. I realized that if I wanted to build a company, I needed really good people. And I felt it was really difficult to find good people. But it was really easy for good people to find good jobs. So if I wanted to have the best people, I had to create an environment that was attractive to everyone. And when I say everyone, I don't mean strictly the executive level. I mean all the way from the executive level down to our newest coworker, who may have, we talked about this, who may have put tape on the box. You know, we would ship out 35,000 packages a day. And you had people in the warehouse that were touching those boxes. And we were focused on how you put the tape on the box. Because if you get a box from a vendor and that box looks crappy, you're going to have a negative view of both the box, what's inside the box, and the vendor. So it was my view that we needed the best, all the way from the best box tapers. And the way you got best box tapers, it gave them ability to grow within the organization. So one of the things I'm proud of is that people went from box tapers to technicians. There were growth opportunities in our company that we continuously got people to grow in the company. So it was by creating, we asked people for 110% of them. It wasn't a country club. We asked them for 110% of their effort, but in turn we were willing to give 125 or 150% of ourselves to them, which created truly a win-win situation.
How did you as a leader let those people on the front line know how important they were? That's the direct marketers, people in a store, someone putting the tape on the box. How did you as a leader find the time, and how did you make sure they knew that they were important?
Maybe it's a little story. I don't know if this will help or not. I happen to be a big bicycle rider. I love riding bikes. And a couple of weeks ago, I went over to a friend's house at home, go for a bike ride, and he had this lady that helps him out at his house there. And when I walked in the house, she said something to me of the nature of, "Are you Michael Krasny?" I said, "Yes." She says, "I used to work for you." at CDW. I said, oh, thank you. And she went on to say, in the mornings when I came in, she said, I would see you every morning when you walked in. You'd stop, you'd say hello to everybody. You would go through, so it's by treating every person like an individual. Daily, I would go twice a day, I would go for walks throughout the whole, I just didn't sit in my office. On a daily basis, I'd walk through the warehouse. I go out and chat with people. I'd ask them, what I do to you all the time. I ask them, well, why do we do this? Why don't we do this? And constantly would be changing things. So, and I was doing it trying to learn and help and go through it. So I think, by interacting with the people and expecting the same thing of everybody within the company to interact with people and to have a high level of empathy for everybody within the company. We just didn't have stock options for the executives. 100% of everybody at the company got stock options. Now, an executive may have gotten 1,000, and the entry-level people may have gotten 2, or whatever the relative numbers were. But every single person was involved with everything. Silly little things like, it's common in a sales department to have sales contests. I'm sure you have them. Yeah. And to have bonuses, things of that nature. Well, how about everybody else in the company? Salespeople are just making the sale. Everybody else is making those sales come true. So we would, vendors would bring in food for them. We said, well, if you're going to bring in food for our salespeople, you got to bring in food also for the people in the shipping department and for the accounting department and everything else along the way. So it was just basically touching everybody like a human being and letting everybody know in our own way how important every single position in that company is.
That's beautiful. A mutual friend of ours told me a story, and so I'll ask you if it's true, and I'll ask you to tell the story and I'll go back to the early days, because it all looks easy now, but in the early days, things were tough. And what I was told is your air conditioning was out in the building in the early days, and it was threatening your ability to service your customers and get products out to them. And you came up with a fix. I'll call it a MacGyver type of fix. Can you tell our folks what that was?
First of all, it wasn't me. It was somebody else. But I'm very proud of him for doing this. And this just shows the entrepreneurism throughout the entire company. We had a computer in a computer room, and the computer room had a dedicated air conditioning unit. And the air conditioning unit broke. And the temperature in the computer room was going like this. And this person said, we got a problem here. He called out the air conditioning people, and they came and said, you need a new motor. He says, put a new motor in. Can't get to it tomorrow. I don't have a motor, I can't get one till tomorrow. He says, no, you don't understand. The computer is about ready to go on the blink if you don't bring down the heat in there. How can we do this? He says, are there other air conditioning units on the roof? He says, yes. Can you take the motor out of one of those and put it into this one so that we can have the computer room not overheat? And he says, well, none of yours will fit, but your next door neighbor's air conditioning unit, he's got the right motor. He says, take it. So they did a MacGyver, they fixed it, and they finished off the night, and that was it. So the next day, so there even more to the story is our neighbor, because we were in 10,000 square feet. Our whole building then was 10,000 square feet. Understand, eventually we ended up in 2 million square feet. So this was early on in the thing. And we were in a complex with other buildings, but we were always taking all the parking spaces in the parking lot. And my neighbor and I didn't get along very well because he could never find anywhere to park. So one day he comes walking in, he says, I got to talk to Krasny. And he comes in, that's it, I've had it. I said, what's wrong? He said, you took my air conditioning unit. I said, what? I said, we didn't take your air conditioning unit. Get out of here. So about a half hour later, I'm talking to the guy that took his air conditioning unit. And I said to him, the guy next door, he said we stole his air conditioning unit. He looks down and he says, I did. And I had to call the guy, apologize to him, admit to him that we were wrong, and get people out to fix his air conditioning unit. But that was just a, what I would call an audible. He called an audible because we needed to, he had a choice of one or two things: shutting down the computer system and not shipping our orders, or stealing the air conditioning unit. He took the air conditioning unit.
I love it. I love it. He had the right, he was doing it for maybe the right reasons, just maybe the...
If he would have just in the next morning replaced it, the guy would never have known that we borrowed it.
So how do you keep that entrepreneurial atmosphere? I mean, when you're a startup and you're all in the same room and you're just trying to make things work, I get that. How do you create that entrepreneurial atmosphere, or at least continue to cultivate it when you have 15,000 people?
It's contagious. Somewhere on there, there's another slide here, I think, that says enthusiasm is contagious. Is it on there? I think so. Enthusiasm is contagious, catch it. And one of the ways is that, you go from, your first group of people, if everybody has it, hopefully they all pass it down, and you keep that, that humbleness within you and that empathy in order to let everybody share in that enthusiasm.
You mentioned humbleness, and you think about the University of Illinois, one of the most prolific universities in the world for creating these wonderful technologies, these entrepreneurial companies that have done so well: YouTube, Yelp, Tesla, PayPal, Siebel Systems, Netscape, Oracle, CDW. Why has the University of Illinois been such a prolific place of creating these startups and these ventures that have really changed the world?
I don't know. I'll only guess. People doing things for the right reason. People who have a passion for technology. People who have a passion for what they want to do. And Midwest values.
Midwest humble. Yeah, I love it. You talked about passion a lot. You've mentioned it many, many times. And we at Gies talk a lot about finding your purpose, or business on purpose, finding your why you get up in the morning and do what you do. I'd love to know what that why was then when you woke up in the morning, and how that's changed and what it is today.
For whatever reason, I always think that everybody's has synapses in their brains, and everybody's synapses are stimulated in some different type of way. I don't know, I just got stimulated by seeing boxes going down conveyor belts. Had this vision that originally orders were taken on a piece of paper, and you would write down what you wanted on the paper, you turn that piece of paper in, and it was a very manual process. And I had this vision, however it came about, I don't know, that people would be at their desk, be in their office, and they'd have a computer terminal, which does not sound like a big deal today, but back then it was. They would have a computer terminal in front of them. They would put the order in the computer terminal. It would go out to the warehouse. The warehouse would pick and ship it, and we would do it on the same day basis. I don't know how it came. It just happened.
And I'm going to hit on something here that hopefully you're okay with, because to me it's been fascinating just watching you over the years. You're one of the most charitable human beings I've ever met. And I even remember getting a check from you for a charity that I was focused on, and you actually wrote it personally.
What was it?
It's a foundation. It was a medical foundation.
Okay.
But that's the point. You literally, instead of even going through your foundation, you wrote the check personally, because you didn't want to go through the foundation steps you needed to. You just wanted to help. And so you just wrote it out, and you didn't say anything, you didn't call me. It was a big number. And there's so many folks that put their names on stuff. There's so many people that that put themselves forward. You've never done that, and I'd love for you to share with everyone here how you look at that giving, why you do it, and why you do it so differently than so many other people.
I think there's three reasons why. Number one, there was a fellow by the name of Julius Rosenwald who took over Sears when it was a fledgling company back in the 20s, built it into this massive empire. And his philosophy was anonymous giving. And he's somebody that I look up to in a very high way. Number two, there happens to be, I happen to be Jewish, and there's this term called takam, giving and asking for nothing in return. And that is, to me, true giving. And number three, I don't want to be any different than my friends. And, I just want to be one of the guys, to be honest with you. And if I start putting my name on things, and I'm sorry, but it makes me different than them. And I just, and I just want to be one of them. And I'm not looking for it. But Larry's doing something different. He's done more than put his name on something. He is actively involved. He mentioned he's here 2 to 3 times a month. He's coming here. He's doing these things. He's teaching classes. He is more than a name on something. He is an energy behind something. So when you're an energy behind something, you have a reason to be proud of it. If all you want to do is tell people that, hey, I was able to write a check and then go somewhere else and not be involved in it, that's a different story. So I very much respect and believe in what you're doing because you've done more than just write a check. You are intimately involved. I walk around with you, you say hello to students, you know the students, you know their lives, you know many things about them. So you're just not writing a check. You are actively involved.
Thank you for that. And you definitely are one of the guys. You always have been. I remember, you're going to kill me for telling this story, but there's a really fancy club in downtown Chicago, and I'm not a member of it. And one day Michael called me up and said, hey, you want to meet me at this place? And I said, sure. He goes, well, let's bike over there. And he literally biked over there with his biking clothing on. So I biked over there, and I walk up to the front in this club, and I go to the front table, and I said, I'm here to see Michael Krasny. And they're like, Michael Krasny's not a member here. I'm like, oh, no, he told me to meet me here. They're like, no, Michael Krasny's not a member here. And there's an elevator behind him, and it goes to the 9th floor, and I'm just so excited because I've never been at this club. And I'm like, no, Michael told me to meet him here. And they're like, well, we have a public restaurant right across the corner. Maybe he's over there. So I walked around the corner. I don't know if you remember this.
The Soho House?
Yeah. I walk around the corner. I'm like, Michael. And he's like, Larry. I'm like, he goes, isn't this place great? I'm like, but you're not a member. And that's just Michael. He's one of the most fascinating human beings. And he always asks questions, and he learns, and he's sharing his knowledge with you as he asks those questions, which is just amazing, and I thank you for that, Michael. Maybe before Q&A, we just do a lightning round? Is that fair? So we'll do a lightning round. I'm going to ask Michael some questions very quickly and see what the answers are. This is going to be fun. Toughest call you had to make while building CDW? Toughest call you had to make while building CDW?
We were putting in I'm getting down to a real detail. We had we had created a new shipping module on our IT system, and we went live one night, and it crashed. And I had 4 different people of the executives telling us what to do. And I had to decide whether I go with him, this person, or this person. And I chose this person's view of it. And the others said, but I said, there's no buts, get out of here. And fortunately, I got lucky, I chose the right guy.
Thank goodness.
Although the others may have worked too.
All right, key trait of an entrepreneur. Key trait of an entrepreneur.
Curiosity.
Curiosity.
Never being satisfied.
I love it. Your greatest success?
My son.
Your son, I love that. Your greatest failure?
Do I have to be honest?
Yeah. We won't tell anyone, right?
I can't say it. Not making it to the next level of the business.
You personally?
Yeah.
Not making the next level of business.
I always think we made it to the B League, B+ league, but Microsoft and IBM and Adele, they're all the A League. We made it to the BB Plus League.
Isn't that the truth? No matter where you go in life, this is something for everyone to think about. No matter where you go in life, there's always another level there. And that can get really, really hard when you're never quite there. And I can tell you, I feel the same way Michael does. I have the same feeling, sometimes an imposter syndrome, right? I'm an imposter in this. And so just something to think about, even when you're gaining success, to stop back and say, you know what? I'm going to celebrate the success. This has been good. Because you're always looking at that next level. It's just human nature. It's interesting you say that. Is it true you have a penchant for gambling?
So I see it in that because I attribute my entire success at CDW, or not my success, CDW's success to Las Vegas and to my former vices. I used to gamble. I used to smoke. And I was in Las Vegas at some fancy casino. I'm waiting for the elevator to go up. You've never heard this story. I'm waiting for the elevator to go up. And this is in the days, this is in the 80s, in the days that you used to be able to smoke anywhere. And there's an sand ashtray in front of the elevator. And some guy comes along, puts out his cigarette in it. And some maintenance person comes over. They take a pooper scooper. They clean it out. And then take a stamp of the logo of the casino, and they put the stamp in there. I said, well, why did they do this? Somebody else is just going to do the same thing. So I was curious. I took my cigarette. I put it in the sand. I walked away, and the guy came over with his pooper scooper, cleaned it out, put the stamp in, and it occurred to me why they do it. Perfection, paying attention to details. So at that point, I also looked around, I saw this billion-dollar casino, and I realized the way they build these is not by selling shrimp cocktails, but people going to the tables, losing their money. So I decided I'm not going to gamble anymore. But I also just realized that the pooper scooper in the sand ashtray, of them constantly cleaning it and striving for perfection. Somewhere else in here it says, perfection is unattainable, but if you strive for perfection, you'll achieve excellence. And that was a learning lesson to me of the pooper scoopers in the sand ashtrays.
Interesting. True or false, you once biked to Mark Cuban's house to try to convince him to buy a baseball team with you?
Close, but accurate enough.
Any more comments on that one?
When the Cubs were for sale, there were many groups that were looking to buy them, and we were part of a group calling. And actually, it's even a better story. And Mark Cuban, you may not know this, but prior to being what he is today, started out life as a computer salesman. And he had a computer company. He sold it and became a writer for CRN magazine, Computer Retailer News. And he was a reporter. And he used to write these really horrible articles on CDW. He couldn't understand our valuations, our business model, and he wasn't very kind to us. So in what year would it have been? I guess in 2008, I get a message, and the message says, Mark Cuban called, please call him. So I call him, and he says to me, you know why I'm calling? I assume you're calling to apologize for the articles that you wrote. And he says, I was hoping you would forget that. But he was also looking to buy the Cubs. And he was trying to put together different groups. And he says, why don't you and our mutual friend come visit us. Come visit me at my house, and we'll talk about it in Dallas. So Scott and I flew to Dallas with our bicycles. And we got off the plane, we got our bicycles, and we rode our bicycles to his house. We met with him, and then we left on our bicycles.
That's awesome. That's a great way to do it. And if I remember right, the story Scott told me is he had a brand new mansion with no furniture. Now that might be an over-exaggeration, but it was...
The two things I remember is there may have been no furniture, but there was also a sign at the front that says guards carry guns. And the other thing was, it's the first time that Nintendo with the joystick, I don't remember what they call it, but he had Nintendo in his, quote, little office, and we were playing Nintendo.
Together? With Mark Cuban?
With Mark Cuban. He was showing us how the Nintendo worked, and we were playing Nintendo in his office.
That's awesome. All right.
And by the way, he was a very bright guy and very knowledgeable.
All right, last question. What technology gets you most excited today? What are you most excited for in the tech space?
Biotech.
Biotech. From a health standpoint?
From a health standpoint, of the ability to be able to, if you think about the vaccine for COVID, which is being done with a RNA versus, typically vaccines in the past have always, I believe they have always been a live formula of the disease itself. They would give you a little bit of the disease, and they would modify so it could not reproduce itself, and then your body would build up an immunity to it. The COVID solution is an RNA, which, and I don't know if I can explain it, but it is it's telling your body how to make the vaccine versus introducing to it the disease itself. And so every aspect of biotech.
Yeah, it's fascinating what's
Yes.
happening in biotech today. Let's go to Q&A, and I think there are some microphones that are being handed out. Or are there no microphones? We doing microphones? So we got a question down here. Perfect. Question right down here.
Yes, sir.
Wait for the microphone. There's one coming on your right. Perfect.
Thank you for coming, guys. My question is for both of you guys. What is the worst advice that you hear and often see around, for young people?
People telling you can't do it. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go with it.
I can't tell you how many times people said you can't do this, so I didn't try it. And eventually, I kept on thinking I can do it, so eventually I went and tried doing it, and I wasn't afraid of failure. Larry and I were talking, and people are afraid of failure, and you have to celebrate failures, because if you never fail, you'll never succeed. If you never try something new, you'll never have anything to succeed at.
Yeah, absolutely echo that. If you look at the most successful entrepreneurs, they've been knocked down 4 or 5 times, but they just keep getting back up, even during the heyday when things are going well. And you heard Michael say that he always had a fear of failure, right? That fear of failure was always there, and that drove him. And so if you can use that fear of failure to drive you, every time you get knocked down, you pop back up, life goes much better. I'll also give you a personal one. My mom, when I got married, told me to never go to bed angry with your wife. So if you have a fight with your spouse, talk it all out. And make sure before you go to bed, you've talked it all out. Worst advice I ever got.
He sleeps pretty well.
It took 10 years for me to realize, you know what? We're not in agreement. Let's deal with it tomorrow, and tomorrow is always a new day. All right, next question. Yeah, right there in the middle. If we can get a microphone to the middle. And maybe the next person who has a question can raise their hand so that we can get a microphone to you now and save a little time. Who's the next question? All right, and we have one down here too. 3 rows back, 2 in.
Thank you so much, sir, for sharing your stories with us. So my question is, what were some struggles marketing your business in the early stage, and what did you do to overcome those struggles?
There's so many of them, I'm trying to pick on which one to figure out first. There was a question is, what do you build first, infrastructure or sales? If you build infrastructure before sales, you may not be able to afford to pay for it. If you build sales before you build infrastructure, you may not be able to service the customer. We built sales before infrastructure. And I think, as I said earlier, we didn't always make every customer so happy along the way. So our biggest struggle was being able to keep up in the operation with a quality service to our customers. I remember early on we had a defective rate of shipping, meaning shipping the wrong product to the wrong customer, probably 30 to 40% of the time. It's not very good. And we kept on trying to figure out how to fix it. And we would come along and we said, okay, we'll take somebody on quality control. And their job will be to look at the order, look at the product, make sure that works. It fixed a little bit of it. What we eventually figured out, once we figured out how to build a good IT system, was that we implemented scanners. And actually, if you don't mind, I'll tell you a story in a second about scanners. And what we would do is we would scan the order, and we would then scan the product. And that's how. Now, that may sound really silly today and simple today, but back then it was a big deal. One of my favorite advertising campaigns ever was Hewlett-Packard's, and the title of it was, "What If?" Constantly asking, what if? So we weren't using any barcodes. We weren't using any scanners. We weren't doing any of this stuff. And I said to the guy, who was a young guy, why don't we start using barcodes and scanners? Our computer system won't allow us to do that. I said, well, let's see if we can figure out how to do it. And I said, what if? And I said, let's call some barcode printers and ask them, how do you print a barcode? I mean, it was really that simple. And for you geeks here, if there's any here, is that you would, the answer to it was, well, you send the controls codes to the printer, start barcode with the data and barcode, and we'll interpret it and then print the barcode on the printer. Okay, so we figured out how to print the barcode. Now, how do we read the barcode? And so we did some more research. And today, and this is before days of Google, of doing research, and we found out that, well, we can get this barcode reader, which plugs into a box. The box, then the keyboard plugs into the box, and then the box plugs into the computer. And what the box will do is, if you enter from the keyboard, it just passes your input through to the computer. But if you scan it, it will decode the scanning and will send it through to the computer. So as a result of that, we didn't have to design systems to be able to recognize barcodes. The point I'm trying to make is, your answer, how do we resolve them? Kept on saying, what if? What if we can do this? What if we can do this? Now, every time we said what if, many times we couldn't. But enough times happened that we could, that we were successful doing it.
Great question over here.
Hi. Thank you, Mr. Gies and Krasny, for spending time with us. My name is Neil. My question is for you. It's, who do you look up to and why?
No, seriously.
I'm serious. Different role models along the way. Today, this is a role model. Early on, there were other role models. He has done a wonderful job of building a multifaceted organization, of leading it. Early on, it was individual operators that ran great businesses. But
Thank you for that. I think we get a question over here.
Hi, I'm Dhanashri. I have a question for both of you. So, over the years, how has your management style changed from back when you were an entrepreneur to now? And how would you, what would you suggest people who are just starting out for how their management style should be, and how do you deal with growing teams?
You go first.
the early days were the funnest days. The days of staying up late at night and figuring out how to do things and such were the fun of building it. Today, we have an organization of people that do things, and I'm sort of just a figurehead today, so it's not quite as much fun as it used to be.
I mean, I used to always do everything myself, and it really inhibited the growth. It was fun, but it really inhibited the growth that we could achieve. And once I started finding people that were better than me at so many different areas, we started to really grow. And I spend most of my time now picking the right people and evangelizing about our culture and mission and letting folks build the business. And when I started doing that is when we really started making a difference. All right, last question.
Yeah, thanks guys for coming. My question is, what is your guys' mindset on opportunity when it comes to making a business? Was it something that you felt you needed to kind of walk into, or was it where you felt like you were able to create your own opportunities?
I think most great businesses are not planned, but they evolve. And some type of ignition happens, some type of spark happens. And it's the ability to catch that spark and to take it and to run with it. Yes, there are business plans. You say, I got this idea, you write out a whole business plan, but I think more successes come from a spark versus a business plan.
100% agree with Michael, and if you noticed in his story, it wasn't that he woke up one night, like you see it in the movies, right? You woke up one night and you're like, what if we distributed computers wholesale to the entire nation? You know, that is just not how it typically works. And I would tell you, you need to put yourself in a position for opportunities to come. You got to take risks, you got to try new things, you got to find new creative ways of saying, hey, I want to try something different. And whatever that different is, it may not make sense to your mom and dad, right? It may not make sense to people in your life, but if you feel that urge to try something, try it. Even if it's a failure, you might find the right avenue, you might find the right direction, and you may find your passion that you've always been looking for. So Michael, I'm going to end with two questions. One is, what's your best memory of this beautiful campus back in 1975 or so?
Two of them.
What?
Two.
Two?
Two. The quad
The quad.
and a fish sandwich at Deluxe Billiards, which is no longer here.
I've heard about the fish sandwich.
Fridays, fish sandwiches, beer, and pool at Deluxe Billiards.
I love it. Okay, one last question. If you were able to go back to your 1975 college self, you could go back in time, sit in front of your 1975 college self, what's one piece of advice you would have given Michael Krasny back in 1975, knowing what you know now?
It's not good for geese.
What's that?
It's not good for geese, the piece of advice I would give him myself.
Let's hear it.
Transfer to computer science or engineering.
All right. So we heard about audibles, we heard about gratitude, we heard about passion, we heard about giving in a way that's selfless, and we heard about what if. Let's give a big hand, a round of applause to Michael Krasny.
Thank you.
I think the standing ovation says it all. Michael, Larry, thank you both. I hope everyone here understands what a rare privilege this was. We have produced thousands of successful alums over the years that this college has been in existence, but to have two of our most successful, most generous alums in the history of this place to be on stage together was really a treat and an honor for us all. So thank you, and thank you all for being here today.
Thank you.